I knew I had to do something. If I didn't, they were going to die.
Welcome to the podcast where we track down Australian war veterans, have a chat with them, and hear their stories. I'm Alex Lloyd, and this is Life on the Line.
The single greatest sacrifice I've made is my family.
There were a couple of public beheadings.
In order to kill, you've got to be a little bit angry. Not psychotic, but just angry.
We could look down Frankfurt and see it on fire.
Stuff blowing up everywhere.
There will be no surrender. And then they had to fight an enemy in amongst women and children in those buildings.
I could never not go back. They were my friends and they felt like family.
She did say, "You've changed."
A soldier put everything on the line to help one of our blokes.
On 24 August 2010, in Afghanistan's Uruzgan province, Corporal Daniel Kieran changed the course of the Battle of Derapet. Over a 3-hour engagement, Dan repeatedly broke from cover to identify enemy positions and draw fire away from his team, exposing himself to a numerically superior and coordinated enemy force. Dan's leadership and his willingness to put his life on the line for his team led to him being awarded the Victoria Cross for Australia, making Dan the third Australian to receive the cross in the modern era. Dan welcomed me into his home in Brisbane for this conversation about his army career, the battle that changed his life, and our nation's highest military award. I'm Alex Lloyd on a rainy day in Brisbane speaking with Dan Kieran, VC. Dan, welcome to Life on the Line.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It is a very wet day here in City, Queensland. Unfortunately, we've had some bad weather, so look, thanks for coming up and taking the time to speak to me.
Dan, when and where were you born?
Okay, so I was born in Nambour, so I am a Queenslander, born on the 18th of the 6th, 1983. So I'm getting older now. I mean, I'll call it early 30s still, 35, that's still early 30s, isn't it?
If you say so. What did your parents do for a living?
My parents were actually separated. I didn't actually meet my dad until I was about, I think it was 11 for the first time. Well, the first time I remembered him anyway, but my mum worked several jobs cleaning early on, and then my dad sort of came back on the scene when I was, as I said, 11, 12 years old, and they moved to the country and they're into horses, cattle, and started up a farm.
Your father occasionally ran rodeos.
He did. He ran rodeos when I was living at Lowmead. So as I was saying, Lowmead's about 100 kilometres north of Bundaberg, and it was a virgin block when we moved up there. There was nothing there. It was trees. There's no fencing at all. And it's just 40 acres they had to start with, and they had a few other little properties as well they used to legist cattle and horses on as well. But it was a good lifestyle. It was a good upbringing, but it was a very simple upbringing. I didn't have a whole lot as a kid. When I say a whole lot, it was dirt floors, no mains power. I think my dad found some carpet at the tip and rolled it out over the dirt and rocks. So it was one of those upbringings as a kid where I didn't have much. It was a rifle and a few dogs. I'd go out on the weekend and go shooting, and I learned a lot about myself as a young fella growing up in conditions like that. I had an older sister, 5 years older than me, but being 5 years older than me, she didn't really like the farm life because she moved there when she was 16, and a couple of years there, and then she was off out of there as fast as she could possibly go.
So day to day, you're often entertaining yourself.
Working with cattle, working with horses, there's always something to do. Up at as soon as the sun comes up, and you're in there mucking out stables or carrying water or feeding horses or livestock, and then trying to run and catch the school bus because I'm late from doing other things, not because I was sleeping in, but because I was working, and then going to school and doing it all over again when you get off the bus at the end of the day. So that's the life of what it is as a kid on the farm. So it was good, but I enjoyed it.
And when do you first look towards the military as something you might be interested in?
Look, I knew quite early on, I would say, that I was going to join the Defence Force purely because of my grandfather's influence. That's my mum's father. He was an artillery sergeant in the Second World War, and had a lot of conversations about him, about his experiences. And it came down to the fact that there wasn't a whole heap of opportunity where I was for employment. It was, you sort of worked on the farm. That was the that's the idea after you sort of finished school. And I knew that wasn't really for me at that point in time in life. I wanted to go out there and explore and do things. I'm fortunate that my grandfather, I suppose, instilled a personal ethos or core values in me that wanted me to try hard and wanted me to get out there and explore things, but do something different. And defence for me was a way to do that, and so I joined up at the age of 17.
And as a side note, briefly, you were also a torchbearer for the Summer Olympics in 2000.
I was actually, yeah. That's just before I went out for my training. Yeah, up at where I was, Merimbale for that. Yeah, look, it was great. I was a Pierre de Coubertin recipient, so that's to do with the Olympic spirit. So that was, that was a sort of a great experience there. And I hadn't done a whole heap of traveling back then. Like, it was from Mullaney, sort of Nambour area where my grandparents were at Maroochydore to I'd never been on a plane before that. I hadn't travelled much at all. I'd pretty much just been in Queensland. So to start getting involved and seeing, I suppose, starting to see the world at that sort of age, it was a great experience and put me in good stead for things later on.
Coming from the 40 acres, then you're opening your eyes to what lies beyond these plains, and also that the army is something that can take you there.
Yeah, look, mate, it was a simple life. Absolutely. And then, all these experiences have started happening, and that was the start of it, of running the torch relay and realizing, it's a much bigger world out there.
So you join at 17 at the end of 2000.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me how your experience was. Basic, IETs.
So I think it was about 2 weeks off. So I finished high school, and the 5th of December was my enlistment date. So it was that 3 weeks off from finishing high school to pretty much, getting on the bus and off I went. I'd already been accepted halfway through the year, which probably wasn't great for my school results, knowing that I had something to go to and a job already lined up.
More productive than going on schoolies.
Well, it was. So yeah, I missed out on schoolies. So I missed out on all that sort of stuff. I did spend a bit of time with my grandfather, actually. Did a lot of fishing, guaranteed, in the Maroochydore River. But he, I suppose, opened up to me for the first time really about some of the harsher realities of war and what he'd sort of been through, which was the first time that he'd ever done that. I think it was because I'd been accepted and I was going down this path that I think it was his time to sort of share those things with me. But look, it was, kid of 17, I had no idea what I was getting in for. I look back now at the age of, I suppose, 35 and go, I don't think I could do it now, knowing what I know now. But back then, had no idea what I was getting into. Was young, keen, and good to go. So it was an interesting trip. I remember getting off the bus after I got into Brisbane, bus down to Wagga Wagga, and I think they were still yelling at me when I finished. I wasn't the best recruit, put it that way. So from Kapooka, obviously, ITs. So ITs for infantry is Singleton, the School of Infantry. So all the skills there, shoot, communicate, all that sort of stuff, working and fighting on fortified objectives, everything else that you learn there, tactics, techniques, procedures. And then I was posted to the 6th Battalion, the Royal Australian Regiment in Brisbane, where we are today. And I was posted there and remained there for all of my career. I mean, I was posted out for operational experiences throughout that time, but I stayed there until 2011. So from 2001 all the way through to 2011, I was at 6 RAR in Brisbane.
And through 6 RAR, you make your way to Malaysia.
Yeah, I did. So first sort of trip overseas, my first, get on a plane and all the rest of it, and adventure was Malaysia, early 2000s, and headed across and, working with the Malaysians, working with the Thai government over there. First experience of different cultures and languages and everything else that goes with that. So that was young guy, had no idea what I was getting into. You do all the briefs, you get on the plane, you get over there and you just the hot, oppressive sort of heat and working jungle and all those things that you hadn't experienced before. So I started to learn a lot about myself, I suppose, my skills and what sort of person that I was working in those environments and sort of strange situations. Because you do learn a lot about yourself, and I was still only young. So
18, 19?
So I was 18, 17, 18. No, actually I was 19, so I just turned 19. So I turned 19 over there, actually. Yeah, so that's still a pretty young kid. I mean, most people haven't even got a job yet at the time they're 19, and here I'm already been in the Defence Force for a number of years and doing, I suppose, international sort of trips. It was tough, some of the conditions that we were working in, and I suppose the jungle over there is different to Australia as well, and it's more about the skills that you learn on the ground and working as a team. Some of those things you need to be put through your paces, and working in those arduous conditions is a perfect place to hone those skills and learn more about yourself, how you interact with your team.
It's a great learning deployment because it's lower intensity in terms of the work you're doing, but you're getting to have these first experiences of overseas and working in that team environment in that
without the risk. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I mean, look, there's no real threat over there. I think that the worst threat we faced, I think, was the crazy road rules over there and the traffic. But besides from that, when you're actually out on the ground with these foreign governments, it's interesting to see how they operate, the challenges that you face when you have the language barriers as well. So all those skills, without a doubt, put me in good stead for later on in life when I was deployed to places like Iraq and Afghanistan. Having those, I suppose, we'll call them baby steps in working in places like that, and having a feel for how they do it differently, because your way is not always the right way or the best way of operating. So it's it's just a learning experience back then. It was great.
Well, you go through those baby steps and then the world changes. Where were you when 9/11 happened? Funnily
enough, I was actually in Malaysia again for my second deployment. Well, not a deployment, but second time I was in Malaysia. I do remember being there at RCB. So I was across there again, and it was there's talk of issuing live ammunition. You're on base. We've got the airstrip there. Everything just locked down, and everyone was just glued to a TV, going, "What is going on? What's happened?" And being in a foreign country at that point in time, the world really did change. I mean, everything from searches to security, it ramped up. It was very visible where I was. So I don't know what it was like in Australia, but where we were, and certainly being in uniform whilst that happened, it was a bit of excitement as well. But I mean, it was quite saddening to see that happen at the same time, and to realise that or not realize, I suppose, at that point in time, the significance of that event and what was going to happen from that. Something was going to change. And straight away that, I wouldn't say the rumours start, but the talk starts. Well, what are we going to do about this? What does this mean for Defence Force? What does this mean for us? So you start pondering and thinking about those questions. And years later, I would find myself in Iraq.
But that's not your next destination. First, you're deployed to Timor.
I was, yes. I spent some time in East Timor supporting the Timorese people, providing security. And that was challenging, I suppose, as well. Just the conditions that I was working in East Timor at the time, very arduous, working in some of those mountain sort of jungle areas. Lantana, that plant that's got prickles on it that just wants to cling onto your uniform, and every time you brush past it, I swear it just wants to cut you. So, I mean, it was just, hot and humid conditions as well. And I think I was 70-something kilos at that point in time, weighed that much. And all my gear, so I had the machine gun at that point in time, or minimum, I wouldn't call it a machine gun. And, all my gear was weighing the same amount as what I did at that point in time. So it was tough. But, I mean, it was no combat. There was no combat involved whatsoever, really. We'd go out and we'd do Overwatch positions, so we'd sit and watch across the border and look for smugglers and through thermal weapon sites or whatever, and report that back. But didn't get shot at the entire time I was there. The worst thing that happened was a vehicle accident in relation to casualties and stuff, but that's what it was. But again, I learned a lot about myself, and I suppose how to inspire people sometimes, because as I said, it was arduous conditions. A couple of occasions, some of the guys weren't doing too well, and it's more about learning about how you interact with teams and getting the best out of them by communicational skills that you've learned. It was a culmination of a lot of things at that point in time, the realization of a young soldier, I suppose, coming into his own. You're out there doing the job. You've been training for so long, and a number of years, I wouldn't say so long, but I've been training for a number of years at that point in time. I just got to 6RAR at Brisbane, and you could see the difference in those that had just got back from operations. They had something that we didn't. I mean, yeah, we were new, and there's always that time when you're new wherever you go, that time of finding the flow, and you could see that they'd been through something and experienced something and hadn't done that yet. So it was good to be part of that. I mean, you learn a lot. There's nothing like going on operations to see how everything actually works in the grand scheme of things. All those jigsaw puzzles of coming together to assist you with your missions, or even the planning cycle that you go through whilst you're on deployment. I mean, you don't really experience it during training. You don't have the assets and resources available often to do it the way that you actually do on operations. So that was the first time, you've got vehicles, you've got helicopters, you've got everything there to carry out a successful mission. So again, I learned a lot about myself and my team, and I think I'm thankful that I started off quite slow in relation to operational experience of back in Malaysia and working with foreign governments, and then East Timor. And, so I'm learning more about myself as a leader, as a person, honing my skills. And I'm thankful it sort of started slow and I had that opportunity rather than going straight into a place like Afghanistan as a young kid, like a lot of people have done. But they've gone in, that's their first trip overseas, and you're dealing straight away with IEDs. You're dealing straight away with people trying to kill you. So for me, it was a very gradual process. I learned a lot along the way, and a lot of mistakes I've avoided later on because I'd learned that lesson when I was younger.
Because you were a junior team leader by this stage.
Yeah.
You go back to Malaysia in 2004, and then a couple of years later, you get your first Middle East deployment, Iraq. Tell me about that.
So at that point in time, I was one of the first courses to go through the PMV, or the Bushmaster driver's course. So I was one of the first guys qualified. So Iraq came up and they're like, well, you've got the ticket to drive one of these vehicles. There weren't heaps of us around. So straight away, I was sort of earmarked to go across. I didn't go with 6RAR. I was actually posted out up to Townsville and supported 2RAR. And we went across as their, I suppose, vehicle drivers for that. And we had a contingent from 6RAR with a lieutenant looking after us. And I think there's 30-something of us that headed across, drivers and crew commanders, and we supported them. I think it was only 7 months. So we were in the changeover operational experience over there from, I think it was OVG West 1 that went into, but it was AMTG 4, I think it was, that we went across there. And it sort of switched halfway from Camp Smithy, where we were in El Mathana province, and we came to Talil, which is the massive American air base there, where, I don't know, tens of thousands of people there. I don't know, there's people everywhere. I'm not sure how many people are there, but it was crazy, the scale of what the Americans go to war. That was my sort of first experience of that as well, and seeing how many people around the assets and fixed wing stuff coming in all over the place. So it was a bit of an eye-opener as well, flying in there, then going out to a little patrol base, which I'd seen in East Timor. Then you see how the Americans do it, and there's McDonald's there, and there's like, what is going on? Am I actually in a war zone? And you realise you are pretty quickly once you get that front gate, and you see the devastation of what's been happening there, and IEDs and burnt out wrecks of cars on the side of the road, and even the devastation within the towns as well from bombing runs and stuff. So you're in this little area that if you don't leave, you wouldn't have a clue what's outside unless you get indirect fire or something like that. It's just a strange world of, well, relatively safety, I suppose, depends who you talk to then going outside and actually seeing what it's like.
Are there any of those times driving through in the Bushmaster that really stand out in your memory?
For me, it was my first combat experiences over there, like when someone was generally trying to kill me and having a proper crack at it. First time I was sort of shot at was actually in direct, and I was fueling up one of the vehicles. And I was in base, and I think it was 107. Came in and slammed into the ground, not that far from where I was fueling up. It wasn't by no means was it a direct hit, and I was inside and I was safe. But the overpressure, I think it took a bit of paint off the side of the Bushmaster as well. But that was my first, that was my first experience of seeing someone, of them actually targeting me or targeting the base in general. And from there, don't get me wrong, I always knew it was pretty serious. But then from there, the lessons learned, they really started flooding in, going, you can get killed here quite quickly if you're not doing the right thing. And then from there, not probably 2-3 weeks later, we got into a direct engagement with terrorist element over there. That lasted for about, I think, 30 to 40 minutes. It was a solid engagement of two opposing forces coming together and, fixed wing assets coming in. They had the labs there that didn't fire, but there was a whole range of maneuver elements coming in to support this operation. I was commander of the vehicle this particular day, and I was on the Mag 58. So the first time I'd actually fired my weapon at someone in contact, and that was, what was that? 6 years after I joined. So 6 years into my career, it was the first sort of combat experience that I had.
Well, you talked about how in Rifle Company Butterworth in Malaysia and then in Timor, you're testing how these units, how the leadership, the teamwork all coalesces when you're actually utilizing those skills. How does that change again when you're in combat?
I mean, it doesn't. That's the thing. There's a sense of, don't get me wrong, the adrenaline kicks in, all the rest of it, but you really start thinking about your surroundings, and I think your brain just works faster in relation to making decisions. I wouldn't say snap decisions, but all that experience that you've had, it gives you that ability to go, well, for me, I had 3 other vehicles around me and we were covering each other by firing when we had people dismounting. And, it's just a combination of everything you've been taught and learned, and it just goes, things just fall into place. You don't take shortcuts. You do what you need to do. And if you have to put the body on the line, you do that to make sure that you're covering your mates and you're looking after everyone. I got recognised actually for that combat. It was just a unit sort of citation, whatever the hell it was, award of something. It was just an internal thing, but it was my peers acknowledging that I'd gone above and beyond to assist them. That was pretty special for me, because that's, at the end of the day, that's all I ever really cared about it. And care about anything else. It's as long as your mates and your team have got your back, and when they acknowledge you, I suppose a high pressure environment like that, for me, that was pretty special. So that was, I suppose, a highlight. There's plenty of things happened to that trip, but for your peers to acknowledge you, for me, that's pretty special.
And how do you feel at the stage when you're coming home from Iraq? Because you're 23, 24, you've been in the army 6 years, and that's a significant personal growth period for any young person that age. Then multiply that by the fact that you're in the military and going through all these significant experiences, and it's the end of your first combat operational deployment. So that was strange. So Rockall, those people are aware. If you're in country for over, I think it's 6-month mark, they'll give you a few weeks off in between, or whatever it is, 10 days off. So this is so bizarre, and it happened again later on in my Afghan tour. In country in Iraq one day, and we're out dealing with an IED, so we're with a British call sign, and they were there diffusing these bombs on the side of the road. And I think a vehicle had just been hit, so you've still got a burnt-out car throughout the road. You've got guys diffusing a bomb. The next day I'm flying out, and I'm in Amsterdam, I think within sort of 36 hours, having some time off to, a week sort of in Europe up to Ireland. Then I come back, and the next day, I think within 24 hours of being back in Iraq, there's bullets striking the outside of my PMB. It is bizarre to go from the high environments and operation to freedom in a way, going, I can make my own decisions for this 10-day period, to socialising and relaxing, just straight back into it. That's just the most bizarre thing that I've ever been through. And again, as I said, it happened later on in Afghanistan. And then it was, I think I went across to the States. I was in Las Vegas one day, then the next day I'm back in Afghanistan. It's bizarre. It's hard to describe. You just can't describe the feeling of going from a place like that, then back into a sort of a combat situation. No easing into it, just sort of straight into it again. Do you have any personal goals for your career at this point, or you're just seeing where the journey takes you?
No, not really. I think for me, I was avoiding promotion there for many, many years, purely from the fact it was a numbers game for me. As a Lance Corporal, as a digger, there was more spots available with the qualifications that I had for deployment. So that was my goal, was to go across overseas. I enjoyed it. I'm not shy to admit that I enjoyed that sort of side of it, enjoyed the combat, enjoyed the being away. So it was, for me, it was, what's the next trip on the horizon? So I was sort of looking for the next trip, and by this stage, Afghanistan was a possibility. So back in the early days, it was, unless you're special forces, you weren't there. But all of a sudden, Iraq's gone, and you're like, well, hang on a minute, we've got guys now going, and guys and girls going to Afghan. And I had a remarkably quick turnaround from getting back from Iraq. and then heading across to Afghanistan supporting special operations guys over there. So I was, again, that Bushmaster ticket got me another trip overseas, and I was a driver for them for, it was just under 6 months. I think it was just on 6 months. I think it was a day short of 6 months, so they didn't have to give me the rockle. But yeah, it was another 6 months tour, this time in Afghanistan, a completely different threat to what I was facing in Iraq.
So you were driving out special operations task groups out to drop them off for them to start a patrol, something like that?
Yeah, doing a range of operations with them, supporting direct action that they were doing. Spent a lot of time out on the vehicles. Wouldn't say weirdest, some of the longest hours that I've ever worked, as in driving. You're driving all night, and then it's summer and it's 50-degree heat, and you're trying to rest somewhere, and you don't get any sleep. You're trying to hide under the Bushmaster in the shade. And I remember one day I was in there, and one of the dogs that we had with us, he's in there, and clearly didn't want me under the vehicle with him. So you're out in the sun while the dog's under the under the car. I'm like, no worries, mate. So but that's just a bizarre experience. I really lost 15 kilos, and that's purely just from the work rate over there. But we were there to do a job, so that it was good to be able to support whichever way we could.
What's it like then driving a Bushmaster, and you're driving it in Afghanistan, and there's this ever-present IED threat?
Look, strangely enough, that was, I'm going to say, you have to correct me with the dates, but that was early on in the piece, right? It was, IEDs were there, but they weren't, it was nothing like Iraq. They hadn't crept in yet. Well, they had, but it wasn't the threat. Our threat, predominantly at that point in time, was a shoot threat. Like they were keen to fight, keen to shoot at you. Occasionally there was IEDs, but when we didn't have engineers back then really doing what they were doing, it just wasn't a thing because we hadn't taken any casualties at that point in time. So, goodness, we got shut up all the time, but there was a lot of, as I said, high tempo period, a lot of combat that the boys were in. First time, I think it was nearly sun up to sundown. So someone was trying to shoot at you during the whole day. Like it was a full, it was like a 10-hour sort of engagement back and forward, with B1s coming in, dropping 500-pounders all over the place, and it just continues throughout the day sort of thing. So, and then, then you got to stay up all night sort of thing, doing pickets or whatever. So, it was a high tempo sort of period of long hours, but it was great. Loved it.
So when do you fall into a place where you are just totally relaxed, the training kicks in? Did you feel that from day one in Iraq, or was it something that built up over time, your mental resilience to just focus on the task?
My upbringing as a kid, I think my mental resilience has been pretty good. And I think that's important. For me, it was, and that's how I reckon I've stayed pretty calm over the years, is those experiences that I had early on and having to fight for everything, but sort of put me in a good place, I think, quite suited to a military lifestyle or a military environment. It was a good career choice for me, I suppose, to go into something like that. I'm well and truly capable of handling the mental stresses. And I can honestly say right now, all these years later, I'm still fine. I've never had any issues from my service. And I'm one of the lucky ones, and I'm thankful for that. And I think it was some of that mental resilience that I built up as a kid and then going forward. But hopefully that stays the way it is.
So you've got plenty of high tempo situations over there. What are some of the funnier, lighter moments you guys use to decompress?
I'm not going to talk about them, actually. No. I mean, the decompression, I wouldn't say decompression. It's, for me, training. So going to the gym, running, whatever back then. And, you need to keep active. You can't just sit around. So for me, that was my way of dealing with everything, I suppose, is getting into the gym and getting stuck in. And that was a good way of doing it, I think.
Give your mind a different task.
Yeah, look, absolutely. No, we did get some downtime as well on my first Afghan trip, but it was out all the time. It was high tempo. We were out all the time, and we'd be out for weeks on end. Didn't shower for 2-3 weeks sort of thing, which is normal, but just living in that environment in the desert sort of thing, and then guys going out on patrol and moving to the next location, and just night after night just doing it again and again and again. Well,
when the repetition of that becomes such a normality for you, does coming home then in the civilization we have here feel quite bizarre?
Look, don't get me wrong, there is an adjustment period. I think anyone says there's not is bloody lying, but my adjustment period, I know, is quite short compared to others that I've spoken. I've spoken about this with my mates and that, and I think that's the trouble with talking about mental health issues. And it's some of those gents and ladies don't get past that period of getting back to what's norm. That's how I look at it, and I've been fortunate. But there's been a couple of weeks. It takes 1 or 2 weeks where you're not suspicious of every single person, or you hear about stories of people walking into the room and they want to sit in the corner so they can see everything. And I mean, it's true, that sort of stuff happens. Or you're looking for IEDs on the side of the road and you're like, hang on, idiot, I'm in Australia going down the M1 or something. Like there's not going to be an IED. Like that happens, but the 2-week period, and I'm like, no, I'm all good again. It's you're back in Australia, relatively safe. But I've spoken to some of my friends, and it happens occasionally. 6 months later, and we just laugh about it, because you're so used to that environment. And that's what you get used to. It's funny what the norm becomes.
By this point, have you had any key lessons of leadership from either an experience where you've been the leader or following someone else?
Oh, yeah, thousands by this point in time. Look, I mean, it's hard to get into the key things. I mean, lessons learnt along the way. Look, that's tough. I mean, it's a combination of your training and experience and seeing what works, and every single situation is different. I mean, the fog of war is the thing where it kicks in. You never know what another human being's going to do, and certainly when someone's trying to kill you, what lengths they'll go to or how devious they are, or you just can't plan stuff once that first shot rings out. But I think for me, that ability to remain calm, absolutely important. The ability to take stock of what's going on around you, then come up with and formulate a plan when all hell is breaking loose. I think is a good skill that somehow I've mastered. I wouldn't say mastered. Somehow I became good at, where, you know, there's bullets coming in, all the rest of it. I wouldn't say it doesn't worry me, but it's nearly like I can block it out and then look at the big picture and assess what's going on, then make an informed decision rather than just making a decision and hoping it's the best sort of thing. Is to actually have a bit of a plan to assess what's happening and then to go forward. So I think I've been lucky in that regard, and I think it comes from experience, but I'm not sure it's just the way my sort of brain works as well.
In January 2009, the world learns the name Mark Donaldson, and for the actions he performed in September 2008, he became the first Australian of the modern era to receive a Victoria Cross. At that time, what did the Victoria Cross mean to you?
I've been asked that before in relation to not Mark Donaldson's award, actually, because I do remember seeing it. You know, it's a massive thing. It's been the first one since
1969.
Yeah, absolutely. But funnily enough, I was in Paula Vella when I went through Kapooka all the way back in, you know, in my first experience in defence. And funnily enough, there's a citation of Albert Jacka directly across from where I used to run out to the hallway every morning with my bedsheet over my shoulder. So I was aware, going through a platoon like that, and every single citation or photo on the wall was a VC recipient, and really learning about the award and what it means. So for me, I think I had more of an idea than some people in relation to the significance of it. But yeah, Mark's was a special occasion. I remember I think it was taping it. I taped it somewhere and watched it later on, like his investiture, and it was a massive deal. I think the defence community stopped to take stock of what had happened and to listen to his experiences. And, you know, it was a sort of special day for Mark, but I think for defence as well, going, oh, well, they're still nominating people for these awards. You know, this will never sort of happen again, even with what was going on. We sort of thought that anyway.
You go back to Afghanistan in 2010. Talk to me about that deployment up until late August.
That deployment was a strange deployment. When I say strange, it was, you know, you often go across and you may not change roles too often. You're going there to do a job, right? I think I had several jobs throughout that deployment, of PMV driver to commander to, I think, acting platoon sergeant at one time to, I don't know, something like, I was just all over the place, to collecting vehicles, outfitting them to get them back into the rotation, comm stuff, all these little random jobs, and then supplying, doing road runs out, supplying all of the patrol bases as well for the first number of months as well. So it went really quickly because I think the pressure was on all the time. You know, you didn't fall into the routine. There was no routine really. It was every day was something different. Or we're going out today, we're out for 2 days, or we're going out for a week, but then we're in, then I'm, you know, flying off somewhere else. So it was fascinating in a way, but it flew. The deployment just absolutely disappeared on me for that first part.
Because you're 10 years in the army or so, a corporal, you're very experienced by this point.
I wouldn't say very experienced, but I had a bit of an idea. Yeah, I was lucky. And I think later on that obviously, not just me, but the platoon group that I ended up with, all of the section commanders, you know, all had 10 years up, like our platoon sergeant, very experienced as well. So very, very fortunate that we had no real young sort of commanders. And that's not a bad thing, but for us, I think it was a good thing in relation that we had that experience. And we were fortunate to have that because we ended up needing it later on with some of the situations that we got into.
Dan, walk me through the events of 24 August 2010.
Well, I'd have to take you back a couple of days, actually, to the lead up to that. So we'd been sent out to Patrol Base Anna Joy. Again, my role changed again. I'd slipped into a mentor role now, so my seventh sort of position out there. So I was there to assist to train the Afghan National Army to get them to the standard to look after, I suppose, the security of their own country. That was my little job, and that was carved out for me to do. That was Anna Joy, and Derapet was a village that fell within that area of operations. We had French Foreign Legion guys out at this little patrol base. Dutch forces were pulling back. So we got out to this place, and let's just say there wasn't much there. It reminded me of home as a kid, right? There was, you know, dirt floors, we got a generator out there. I think they had 12 people out there. I could be wrong. And then obviously, but us being Australians, we ended up with about 24 out there. Didn't have the bedding sort of to accommodate that. And as Aussies do, we made it work. And it was, you know, it was very tight sort of living conditions, but we made it work. So we didn't really know what the threat was out there because I hadn't really patrolled sort of forward of a certain northing, meaning they'd gone down, they'd done VCPs, vehicle checkpoints, they'd done some searches and stuff, but they never really actively patrolled. They said, hey, if you go past this point, you're going to get shot at. They'd also taken a couple of casualties not that long ago with a vehicle. So by this time, the ID threat is absolutely insane. It's right. They're everywhere. There's IDs everywhere. And they'd lost a number of coalition forces. The Soskin vehicle got hit just 200 metres from where the patrol base was. So they end of their tour, they're going home, government's pulling them out. So they weren't actively or aggressively patrolling the area. So we had no real idea what we were getting into. And we did an Australian-only patrol on the 22nd of August, so 2 days before. 20 Australian soldiers who went out. That was basically our entire team of soldiers there. We had it wasn't a gun car, but we had a PC with us 50 on it that was out there supporting us for a bit of extra firepower as well. And we also had 2 gun cars, or we had I think Victor 1-1, so we had a call sign of Lavs come out and support us as well. Sure enough, we got into Derripit in the valley itself, and we'd gone patrolling through the village, and the people were out, and we were speaking to them and talking to the kids. And sure enough, we got into contact with 2 Taliban or 2 enemy fighters. And I think we were quite fortunate, we're quite lucky this particular day that we've been patrolling along a certain axis and sort of down an aqueduct. And for whatever reason, we decided to change our direction, as you do occasionally. Aqueducts are usually easier to walk down in relation to not having to worry so much about IEDs. Don't get me wrong, they're still possibly there in the water, but it's harder to do that with water flowing. So it's an easier method is to patrol down these aqueducts at that point in time. And we'd cut right out of this aqueduct, and then we cut left again, and sure enough, we got the drop on these 2 guys. So our 2 lead scouts actually saw these people set up, ready to ambush us. So we're sort of lucky that our 2 front guys took that course of action, and we got the drop on these guys, and sort of a small firefight ensued. But it wasn't really a different engagement, but they were in a well-prepared position. Probably, I'd say 10 or 11 engagements. Shootouts had been in up until that point, troops in contact sort of situations. So that team was experienced enough, and we sort of, a bit of a firefight happened there. We had the Lavs roll up and shoot a few rounds, and that they couldn't get the elevation, unfortunately, to suppress them. We knew straight away that there was enemy forces there just by how they reacted to contact and how professional they were with how they broke contact. It was drills. It wasn't just random 2 farmers having a crack. Like, there was something a little bit different about that, how they reacted to us engaging them, which sort of got us thinking a little bit that these guys might be a little bit more professional and what we experienced up until that point in time. So 2 days later, the 24th of August, the idea was to do a clearance mission. It was a KLE, so it was a key leader engagement. So you go and find the leader of the village and sit down with him, as well as a sort of a clearance of the village itself. Presence patrol / it's a whole range of missions in one on this particular day. And we're very fortunate, the amount of planning that goes into these ops, not to get into the details. We had gun cars available to us. We had QRF available. They'd sent out another platoon to act as cutoff and provided us with an extra section of guys as well to bolster our numbers, which was 4-3 Charlie, their call sign, as well as we had extra snipers come out and had a couple of teams of joint fire or tactical controllers as well, JTACs with us as well. So, it was a very well-planned sort of operation. And the idea is we had engineers and would search. The plan changed, actually. The idea was to search in our gun cars, and where they could provide overwatch and fire support if required the next day. The idea was to search them at night or just before night, but they couldn't end up getting their cars in just because of the amount of strikes. So they're getting false hits as they were searching. Low light sort of came down, like, no, it's not worth it. So they pulled the vehicles back and they had to do it the next morning, first light, to get them in. So they get across to this hill where this IED strike happened before we got to this area, hence the caution in making sure it was done right. And they had they noticed as they were clearing into the location, Taliban clearly had an eyeball on us because we saw droves of women and children, or they reported droves of women and children leaving the village itself, which is not unusual. I'd seen it before in my last deployment, and you see stuff. It's a combat indicator. Potentially something's going to happen. Women and kids leaving the area. There's no males with them or fighting age males with them. So it was an indication that something was going to happen. So that searching took a long time, again, with all those false hits. So our sort of schedule was a little bit behind, but the engineers came back to our location on Patrol Base Anadoy. Well, they married up, with us as we patrolled out. So it was about 20 Australian soldiers, as the 20 Afghan National Army soldiers that we took with us. We always tried to put that Afghan face on it. It's their country. They're patrolling. They're leading this because they needed to do it when we left the country. And as we got down to the bottom of the hill that we were on top of, we married up with 4-3 Charlie, the section that was provided to us for extra protection security. The remainder of their call signs sort of spread out as a cut-off position in case something happened. They were in a position where they could react if required on top of a hill. We had a quick sort of set of orders, and from there we stepped off to this clearance, and we're walking through the village. Nothing really happened. We didn't see anyone. They were all gone. All the doors were shut. No women, kids out. A few dogs kicking fleas lying around. That was about it. And we're about 3/4 of the way through the village, and we're sort of like single scattered sort of file. And I think I jumped on the radio to the boss and said, hey, we need to get more aggressive with our posture here because I feel that something's about to happen. So it was quite fortunate. Again, it comes with experience, right? That this doesn't feel right. I mean, we've been like this before, so we changed our method of our patrolling forward. So we slowed down, we spread out. We had the section 4-3 Charlie about 500 metres behind. So we changed it up a little bit, and I'm sort of thankful that we did because we got round one of the last buildings in the village itself, and then came under machine gun fire straight away. And we had 2 Afghan soldiers that went up onto this sort of on the hill. They didn't crest the hill, but it's slightly to my slight right. So as I've come around the building, I see bullets strike the building beside me to the left, sort of thing, sort of kicking up dirt and dust as they do when they come in. And then I had 2 Australian soldiers in front of me. There was an aqueduct that they moved forward to, so they could see what was going on there, and they started assaulting forward. That was the idea, is to assault forward and get the jump on what was happening. Straight away, I thought, well, there's no point me going forward when there's a hill right beside me. To my left-hand side, there was corn crops and dope. So there's a marijuana crop, and it was high that time of year. It was 6-7 foot high. So this provides great cover. You know, enemy forces or even us could move all the way through that with relative cover. You would never know they were there. And then right on top of you. So I thought, I'm not heading that way. I'm heading up to the top of the hill. So I pretty much ran straight up the top of this hill. I thought I was in relative cover purely because I thought the contact was in front over the hill forward sort of 80 to 100 metres. But turned out, so I got to the top of the hill and clearly gone too far because I exposed myself too far straight away, because as soon as I got up there, the whole hill was erupted in dirt and dust as bullets start coming in. And it wasn't just that one position. So up until that point, we thought it was a typical maybe 4 or 5 guys. That's all we'd ever really faced. I'd never hit any more than 10 people the entire trip that I'd been there, that particular trip. As soon as I got to that top of the hill, I could clearly see several locations that were engaging. You know, there was probably 50 people already in position waiting for us in a sort of an ambush style as we got into contact. So I got to the hill. That bloke's at 80, 100 metres in this aqueduct has obviously seen me on the hill and started firing at me. Across my left, so there's like a river as well separating us. Not separating us, but a river separating the rest of the village. And it was in part, well, you wouldn't pass it. It was considered a major obstacle. If you got in there, you'd get killed trying to get across. There's just no cover whatsoever. But probably 300 metres to my left-hand side, several locations there were firing at me on top of the hill. So I had their angle of fire coming across where my position was. And then more locations further, probably 500-600 metres down the valley, started shooting at me as well. And to my right-hand side, there was another feature or a mountain. And to this day, I have absolutely no idea how someone would have got up there. It was sheer cliff face nearly. And somehow there was someone up there firing down, and I knew there was someone up there because of the trajectory of the rounds. Like, you can see the round, but you can see how it was hitting the dirt and dust in front of you and kicking up, and you're like, that's coming from up somewhere, coming down. So straight away, the idea was the Laos would to hold for a while if we got into contact, and set ourselves out and establish what we had. But straight away, they rolled up and started firing pretty much straight away. And I was very thankful for that, because they neutralised that target on that mountain within minutes of that happening. Because if he had sat up there and had free rein, he would have seriously done some damage up there. So from there, I mean, it sort of kicked off. We consolidated. We tried to work out what we had. I remember getting on the radio going, "Boss, this is big. Like, something's going on here. There is enemy combatants absolutely everywhere." From there, just due to our location on the ground and the terrain, we were already sort of committed. Like, it would have been, at that point in time, probably more dangerous to pull back than it was to assault forward, which may seem strange to some people, but that's just the lay of the land and how we ended up. The idea was to assault forward. And let's be honest, we had the firepower, we had the vehicles, we had support from the Americans, we had fixed wing assets, we had the works. So why not? Let's have a crack at this. It was Afghan-led. They were keen to resolve this and clear this village out as well. So the call was to assault forward, and that's what we did. I stayed on that hill for that first half an hour where I was, and had a young Lance Jack well and truly monitoring everything behind and doing an exceptional job of getting people up and resupplying people. And I ended up with most of the Afghan forces in my location. Everyone with a machine gun pretty much was in my location, providing support by fire, or if they had an RPG or a GLA sort of thing, to be able to lob stuff down into the enemy locations. I will say now, right, one of the funniest things that's ever happened in combat was that particular day when I'm on this hill with no interpreter, with 2 Afghans with RPGs, and here I am in combat. Like, there's rounds coming in. I'm on the ground, on my belly, as rounds are sort of skidding along the ground around me, and I'm trying to explain to this bloke with an RPG what I need him to fire at, because there's clearly a target there that they're using, and I've seen the muzzle flash. I know that's where they are, and I've got a bloody star on me. So I'm like, you get your RPG and you shoot at this location. I'm trying to point it out. I'm using rocks, and I'm going, this is the target, this is the building. I need you to, fire your RPG, and I need, I'm throwing my rock on the ground to simulate the RPG going off and making noises. I'm like, boom, and I'm like, mate, it was just absolutely unbelievable.
This is like action comedy.
Oh, mate, it was hilarious at that point in time. And then, sort of looks at me after he fires, and he missed by something. I missed by 100 metres, I think. But anyway, it was.
But did he miss because he missed, or because he didn't know where you wanted him to go?
He didn't know where I wanted to go. Clearly, I wasn't explaining it properly, because the second one was pretty much on target. So it's not as if he wasn't a good shot. It was just one of those bizarre moments that I sort of look back now going, what the hell was I even trying to do whilst I was still under fire? But I mean, that was, that was sort of half an hour in, sort of one of those strange things.
How does the battle continue from there?
Well, it goes downhill. From there, it's about 30 minutes in-ish. 4-3 Charlie, the team that was providing rear security, has pushed up to our location. And when I say pushed up, they've ran 500 metres-ish through aqueducts. So they're doing high knees as you do in the surf. It's summer. I think I was carrying 40 kilos-ish, everything, radios, all that crap you have. And that's heavy. It's pushing 50 degrees already that time of the morning. That team got to our location and they pushed up on the hill, roughly the very first little bit that I went up when I first got killed. So they got onto that location and they weren't there. They were only there a matter of seconds when a mate of mine, Lance Corporal Jared McKinney, got hit. And it came over the radio. And he was probably 50 to 60 metres to my left-hand side. And I mean, it's open, like it's bloody open hill, but kind of on the reverse side of it, meaning you've got some cover from bullets coming in. They're striking the hill in front, so they're not really, you have a few coming over the top, and obviously if they're shooting high, you hear them sort of zip over your head. You've got a pretty low profile, making sure that they don't really get a good hit on you. But unfortunately, because of the lay of the land, they were sort of coming, like, I wouldn't say flanking us, but nearly flanking us on the left-hand side, or they were trying to flank us on the left-hand side. You get the sort of that unfollowed fire happening again. And that's what's obviously happened in this case. They've sort of got round to our left flank a little bit, and this guy across, I suspect this is where it's come from, across the river, some 300-400 metres away, has managed to get rounds on target and hit him in the arm. I remember coming over the call over the radio. Oh, he's been hitting the left arm. Now, I didn't think much of it. I mean, that's strange, but I mean, you get shot somewhere. I suppose you don't really think about getting shot in the arm as a serious gunshot. I mean, that's what went through my head straight away. It's like, oh, he's been, whatever.
It's not to the torso.
No, that's what I mean. Like, that's straight away. I was like, oh no, he'll be fine. It wasn't even a concern. Wouldn't even say it really nearly even registered just because he's been hit in the arm. I'm like, oh well, he's got guys there. They'll sort him out. I remember sort of glancing over. I've got Afghan soldiers there, making sure that they're not firing on our guys that are assaulting forward. So they're still moving forward slowly, very, very slow through the aqueduct. There's so much cover. They're battle pairs moving forward, covering each other as they're going forward to try and clear these guys out. But it happened quite quickly. I remember looking over again, and there were a number of people around him, and his mate was sort of lying in the dirt and the dust on his back on top of this hill, and they were clearly exposed. The Taliban had managed to start to flank us on the left-hand side, and we had our labs engaging. But we also had a young fella who was bloody exceptional. He jumped out of the back of one of the labs and we could see the rounds detonate. I had no idea what it was at that point in time, but he jumped out and he grabbed one of the 84s, Kalashnikov rifles, and he was firing 84 airburst and preventing that happening. So this one young guy was doing one-man drills in the dirt and dust on the hill some 800 metres back in his location. And without his actions that day as well, I'll tell you right now, it would have been a lot more trouble as well. So he was dealing with that situation. But I remember looking over and seeing people working on him straight away, and I thought, that's strange. Like, it was just like he's been shot in the arm. That didn't really compute at that point in time. And they only took another 10, 15 seconds to realise that they were in trouble. Someone started doing CPR. I think it was one of the engineers we had was crouched over the top of him on the hill, doing compressions on the hill. And I remember seeing rounds coming in. There'd been a lot of rounds coming in, and most of them were soaked up in front of that hill, as I said. But this time, they pretty much had them. Someone was on and was firing and had them in their sights, and you could see just the fall of the machine gun pattern pretty much right around them. And I thought the whole team's about to get killed. This whole group of guys, as they're on their belly. This one guy, I know who it was, but I won't name him. But he's, here he is on his knees on top of this hill, just not oblivious to the danger, but he's ignoring it himself, going, he's just trying to work on his mate, and they're trying to sort of drag him off the hill at the same sort of time. As I've looked again, someone's grabbed him by the helmet and ripped his helmet down as he's, leaning on top of him. And as he's done that, a burst of machine gun fire went straight through where his chest was. And I thought, these guys, all of them are about to die if someone doesn't do something. At that point in time, we had a guy doing 84 drills. We had a team of mortars that never fired. Well, I know why they didn't fire. It's just we didn't have clear identified targets at that point in time, and there's still people living in the area. But we had everything available to us firing at that point in time. We had our labs firing 25 mil. We had 50 up there firing. We had a couple of snipers with us within the team as well, trying to identify and engage targets. We had our JTAC there as well. But I had to do something. I deemed it myself. I mean, I was in charge of that team. So I came up with a plan, and I remember having an Australian gunner. He's a young fella, did an exceptional job that day as well, to my right-hand side, and sort of have a quick conversation going, I'm going to draw fire away. I'm going to do something. I'm going to have to try and do something here, because currently what we were doing wasn't working. So I remember sort of standing up and sort of taking a few steps forward and started sort of moving to my right-hand side. And I suppose it's a strange sort of feeling, a strange sound when a bullet travels past your head. For those that haven't had that experience or haven't done it when you're in the range or something, it's like It's like a crack of a whip. And the closer and closer that it gets, it changes sound, essentially. And I could hit the cracks. They're just insane, all around me sort of thing. You just intensifying. So clearly I knew they were shooting at me. I knew they'd seen me, and they started engaging me. I suppose there's two reasons that I did this. One was to try and give the team the ability to help my mate, to get him off the hill, not under fire. And the second was to identify targets so we could start bringing to bear some of the fire support that we had. By this stage, I think we had a couple of fixed-wing assets coming in, had them lined up. We had the mortars, as I said. There's a couple of Apaches in the area as well. So the idea was to let's get these guys targeted. As soon as I started running and there's bullets hitting the ground in front of me, then they're sort of behind me, and I'm committed anyway. So I kept going, probably 40 to 50 metre-ish run, which is it's a long time. It feels like a long time when you're carrying that much gear. I'll be honest, the adrenaline was up at that point in time. And I've sort of come back off the hill like a triangle, I suppose, and got a bit of cover and ran back up again. And I sort of remember looking over and I sort of going, is it working? Oh, no, he said it's working. And I said, yeah. Like I gave him, no shit, it's working. But I remember looking over again, and it was, I suppose it's like, I don't know, like a garden hose from watering the garden with bullets, and it sort of switched to me and chased me along the hill, and it sort of gave him a bit of time as well. But I ended up doing that a number of times to assist with the CASEVAC, the evacuation, and to assist with trying to identify them so we can start dropping bombs.
Because that's the thing, that you did not just do this run once, you ran back and back and back and kept going.
Yeah, so there was 4 in total. So I should be dead for doing that to start with. And I get a lot of people asking...
Did you expect to get shot?
I hoped... Well, no, I kind of did. Look, I justify it by this. I had plates on front and back. And I was carrying the bloody heavy plates back then as well, the armor-piercing ones for some reason. So I wasn't worried if I got hit on one of the plates. Like, I was very confident in my equipment. I knew there was a chopper already coming, right? So I hoped I'd get hit on one of the plates. If not, they could throw me on the helicopter with my friend. But I knew I had to do something. If I didn't, they were going to die. And that's how I looked at it. And so I acted. And I'm very conscious of the fact if I had got hit, well, then it would have taken more people out of the contact as well. Absolutely, it could have been a terrible idea, but that's one of those things where you have to make a decision, you have to go with it. But very conscious, if I had got shot as well, it would have taken more soldiers out and gone absolutely to shit after that. But, it worked. It was one of those things that actually worked. I was fortunate enough not to get hit. But then I think on the fourth one, I've sort of run back and assisted, sort of helped to run across and started organising an LZ and go to another one of the guys and doing a bit of a clearance. And, there's so much going on, so many working parts to it, as well as trying to assist with the CASEVAC as well and assist with the first aid. So while this is all going on, you've still got enemy soldiers or whatever, Taliban fighters trying to kill you. And then you've still got our snipers engaging and still providing target indications. And so it doesn't stop just because you've got a casualty. Everything's still going on, as well as trying to deal with this situation that's unfolding as well. But, it was a bit of a shit fight to try and get the chopper in, just due to the terrain where he ended up landing was nearly a courtyard. And he had absolutely no clearance between the rotors and the wall. Like, this American pilot just banged it in there, bounced it in there pretty much, and ran out a couple of times and managed to get it in. It was weeks later, one of our soldiers had an opportunity to talk to that crew, and they said they'd never seen anything like it when they came in. They knew it was Hot LZ, but they were flying over the top of the hill, and they see our labs on the 2 gun cars firing at a wall, and behind this wall is probably 10, 15 Taliban, all with machine guns, all the rest, all lined up behind this wall as there's 25 mil slamming into the wall as they're behind it, sort of taking cover, and then seeing all of us lying down on the hill, all firing, tracer going in. They'd never seen the amount of Taliban on enemy movement, and they'd been flying for a long time and been doing a lot of operations. So it was interesting to see how serious it was, because we knew on the ground, bullets coming back, we knew there's blokes everywhere shooting at us. Just the weight of fire, we knew it was pretty serious. But getting that elevated perspective going, this is what was sort of happening as we rolled in, highlights how dangerous the situation was.
So how does the battle wrap up?
Another 2.5 hours. So we managed to get him out of there on the chopper back to Terrancott, and for another 2.5 to 3 hours-ish after that.
What's that like just on your... is adrenaline keeping you going that length of time?
No, look, it doesn't. It peaks and troughs of that. Ran out of water at some point. It's hot. I think I only had 3 litres that day, but I did so much running. I had my GPS on. I did like 24 Ks or something, like back and forward along this hill.
You hit your step goal for the day.
Oh, that was insane. It was just, just making sure that all my soldiers were doing the right thing, and having that element of Afghan soldiers there that they didn't speak English, ensuring that they were not firing on our soldiers as they were moving forward through the aqueduct and through the greenery. Like, it was, I had a tough job in that relation of I had a bloody close eye on them, put it that way. Few lulls here and there, and this young private that I had with me that was, I suppose, my battle buddy, without a doubt, an outstanding job. But you speak to the other guys from that combat, and it was a strange where there was several different things going on. There was me on the hill, you got the labs over here, the fire support element. We had snipers further back in our patrol base. Unfortunately, they couldn't really do a heap that day just because of the visibility and stuff. But there was several little groups, and they all had their own little battle and all had their own little thing going on within this, I suppose, broader engagement with the Taliban sort of fighters that day. So it sort of finished when we were sort of running low on ammunition, but we got to the end of the village, and it came back essentially what we were trying to achieve going forward. We're trying to clear them out. We're trying to follow them up, and the river being there, being a major obstacle, it came down to a risk factor. It just wasn't worth the risk of pushing across open ground, a river. Towards the end of it, we ended up having Apaches finally got there and started doing strafing runs. So they ran dry. We ended up having an artillery sort of engagement later on, but it was very late, the combat side of it. And I'm not sure why it was so late. We need to clear ground, obviously, when the choppers are in there to get my mate out. But to this day, things could have gone smoother, but that's just the nature of war and the nature of the fog of battle. I think we were very fortunate that particular day to get out. And when I say fortunate, I mean fortunate to only have one casualty, unfortunately. There could have been a lot more that particular day.
So what had happened with the casualty? Was it more than being shot in his arm?
He got hit in the arm, went straight through his heart, and he was pronounced dead, unfortunately, when he got back to Tarancot. And that's tough. It's a major blow. It was a major blow. I'd known Darren for a long time. I'd been in Iraq with him. I'd been at a barbecue before he came across with his family and stuff. So it's, that's hard to lose a friend and lose a mate and know that you're still in country for a number of months still. And you've still got a job to do. You still have to go out. And you still need to be in the right headspace because you're dealing with IEDs and people are still trying to kill you every day. I mean, that's tough. It's you get back to base and there's a time for grieving, a time for reflection of that, and then you need to get on with the job because if you're not in the right headspace, you put everyone at risk, not just yourself, but your entire team.
And how was the rest of the deployment?
In all honesty, it felt like the handbrake was pulled on. We were ready to go back in again. And I wouldn't say, go out there and seek justice or anything. We were like, well, these guys are here. We're here. Let's go out there. Let's claim them out. Let's have another hit out and clean the rest of this valley out. And that didn't really happen. I mean, election time was coming up as well in September, so we were gearing up for that as well. And sure enough, we had major contact on election day as well, and they attacked the base where we were a couple of times, and it was ongoing. The day that chopper came to get me, directly across from where the platoon that was in the cutoff position, right in that location, a van full of civilians and children and kids was hit by an IED. And remember, there's a photo. One of the guys that's crazy just happened to be taking a photo, going, "Oh, I'm going home." Snapped it as it's detonated right when this van's gone over the top of it. Just fascinating that these guys are there and they're killing their own people as well, and and then blaming it on us. And it's just, I wouldn't say fascinating, but it's devastating. Yeah, absolutely.
So Dan, you've been over to the Middle East on 3 deployments, 2 to Afghanistan, 1 to Iraq. How do you reflect on the contribution you made to the region, both yourself and the team?
Well, I mean, that's a tough question. In a way, I'm fortunate that I've had a number of deployments. Now, I've certainly in Afghanistan, I can make that comment of, did it at that point in time change the lives of people that were there? And I can say that it did. I'm not just talking infrastructure programs. I'm saying from when I was there early on to going back again in 2010, kids happy, going to school, hospitals opened, women back out and about on the streets. What we were doing there was making a difference. I saw that. Was it worth the price that we had to pay? Unfortunately, that's what the politicians have to worry about. We signed up to head across and, I'm happy to contribute whatever the government wanted me to contribute in. And if that's fighting in a war in Afghanistan on that, I know right now that if we weren't there, if we weren't in places like Iraq and Afghanistan stemming the flow of terrorism, it would be in our back door. And I firmly believe that. I prefer to fight it overseas than fight it in our backyard. So that's how I look at it. It was worthwhile being there at that point in time. Unfortunately, I think it's not a great place at the moment, and it's gone backwards again. What the solution is, people that get paid more than are smarter than me can work that out in the future. But it's it's unfortunate that the price is so high for freedom, but it is because freedom's worth it.
On the 1st of November 2012, you're awarded the 3rd Victoria Cross for Australia, the 99th Australian overall to receive a VC. Before we talk about that day specifically, that was over 2 years since the battle you were awarded those actions for. Did you know an award was in the works, or was it a very late surprise?
Look, it was strange 2 years later on. There was a lot of talk still. And in all honesty, I'd already made the decision prior to going on that deployment that I was getting out after that. For me, that was over the 10-year mark. All the rest, it was time to move on. And I ended up seeking employment in mining industry. It was a bit of a boom at that point in time. And instead of working over in Kalgoorlie, blasting as a shot firer in a gold mine. But 2 years later, it was a surprise. I remember getting a call, and I was working in the mines, and it was a call from the Chief of Army, as everyone does, gets a call from the Chief of Army 2 years after sort of getting out. And he sort of go, how are you going? All the rest of it, asked me a few questions, and I thought it was quite bizarre. He goes, you've been nominated for an award from Afghanistan 2 years ago. I'm like, okay, no worries, and sort of left it at that. And then it must have been not long after that, I got another call from him going, where are you? I've got the jet, and I'm flying to Kalgoorlie to come and see you. I'm like, I'm at the mines working. Didn't tell me what it was about. I had no idea. And as you do, your mind starts wandering. Going, okay, so he said I was nominated for something, but now he's coming to see me personally. I'm like, I'm in trouble. I've done something wrong. You know what I mean? Like that's what I thought. I thought, God goodness, I've been able for the last 2 years. They're coming to get me, or I had no idea what was going on. And he jumps off the plane, and I'm there at the Kalgoorlie airport, and he hands me a letter from Stephen Brady at the time. So it was the Governor General's secretary, and it was from behalf of the Queen, and it was for a nomination for the VC. So I was absolutely blown away. Now, they didn't give me a whole heap of time to decide because I hadn't spoken to any of the team about it whatsoever. You know, that deployment finished. We all went our separate ways, whether it be postings or people getting out, and hadn't had a chance to talk to anyone about how their thoughts were. Because to this day, I still don't think I deserve, a Victoria Cross. Should I have been killed for what I did? Yeah, probably should have been shot and killed. But my actions, although they were mine, to the idea of trying to save my team and all the rest of it is, I suppose, the outcome of that. But I was just doing my job that day. Was it dangerous? Was it risky? Should I be dead? Yes. But I still don't think it's sort of worthy of a VC, but other people and the process deemed that it was. I nearly said no. And not many people realise that, as I nearly turned it down on the spot. But then I thought, well, the story needs to get told as well. It wasn't just me that was there. There's a whole team of guys out there, a combat team of labs, of engineers, of snipers, of everyone else, and they did an exceptional job, and their story needs to be told as well. So I think there's a bit of pressure there from defence as well. I think that's how they do it. They don't give you a whole lot of time to decide. And look, it was a tick and flick boxes and a sign and a signature, and that was it. I suppose the rest is history now. And I was told not to tell anyone whatsoever, and the investiture occurred in Canberra.
You're also doing it on behalf of the regular army because Mark Donaldson, Ben Roberts-Smith, SASR, Lake Cameron Bed after you, 2nd Commando Regiment. So you're also representing the regular army, which makes your award stand out a bit.
I don't think it makes it stand out. It's
different from the other three. You're representing a different part.
Yeah, well, it was all different. I mean, it's different circumstances and situations. And look, I've become friends with the other guys as well, and Doug and Kay as well. Speak to them occasionally as well. And it is, unless you've been through it, and I wouldn't say the combat side. There's plenty of guys out there I reckon have probably haven't been recognised for stuff that probably should be. And then that's my personal opinion. But to go through the process of then receiving it, the investiture and all the rest of it, there's not many of us that have been through that. It's life changing without a doubt, and there's good and bad to that. None of us nominated ourselves. I think that's the best part as well, as your peers deem that you've done something and they put you forward for it. So you have no say in that whatsoever. I suppose that's a positive from what it is.
Talk me briefly through what you do beyond the military.
Me? Okay, right now, so I'm going to skip forward a few years because I was in the mines and the rest of it, got out, came back. So I'm living in Brisbane now in Queensland, and look, I'm actually at school again at the moment. So I'm currently doing my executive masters in business, and I'm doing that through QUT. So it's, in there for a few days studying, and it's this new, first year down, goodness. So only another 12 months, 14 months to go. So I'm doing that at the moment. I'm working defence industry still. So I'm currently working for Australian Defence Apparel. So they do all the low courage combat ensembles and stuff. So it's a good place for me to work, and it's a good fit for me at the moment. I do enjoy that, having a bit of a say occasionally in some of the future projects for our equipment and looking after our soldiers is what's important to me, and to have that ability to do that. And I suppose the VC in a way is giving me that opportunity to make those connections to work in that realm. So I'm thankful for that.
And you're a council member on the Australian War Memorial.
I am. Look, very fortunate. I'm very fortunate to be on the wall. I love that place. My VC, or the original, is on display there, and it has now the largest display of VCs. I think at last count there was 85. I could be wrong. I should probably know. I think on display there at the moment, which is out of the 100 is significant that we've got. But I really do enjoy that position, and the council or the Australian War Memorial, it's a great place of healing as well. And I'm very fortunate, as I said, to be able to take part in that and some of the projects that they have.
Dan, I asked you what the Victoria Cross meant to you in 2009. Now you've been the recipient of one for 6 years. What does the VC mean to you today, and what do you think it means to the public?
To me, look, it means, again, it's acknowledgement from your peers and your mates. Look, it's not as easy as everyone thinks it's, you're awarded something. And in a VC, it's life-changing, absolutely life-changing. I probably wouldn't be studying now, wouldn't be doing work-wise that I'm doing now as well. So it's completely upended and changed my life in that regard. In a way, it's given you a public profile that I don't think any of us asked for, as an expectation that you behave a certain way, which is fine, and an expectation that you do certain things as well. So look, there's a lot of pressure. Part of the award itself is to uphold the standard and the tradition of some of the individuals, impressive individuals that have been awarded over the years as well. So there's a lot there that people don't, I suppose, understand and realise that goes with it of being a recipient. And that's challenging. It's absolutely challenging. Public's point of view, I mean, it's the highest award in Australia and the Commonwealth Honours and award system. So they don't hand them out all that often, and it's for, I suppose, acts of bravery in the face of the enemy. Now, I am very fortunate that I'm alive, one, to talk about it and share my experiences. And it's not just mine, as I said. It's about remembering the mates that served with me from the 6th Battalion, the Royal Australian Regiment. I'll even mention the Cav guys as well, and the engineers and everyone else, because it wasn't just me there that day. So it gives me the opportunity to be someone that can speak about great things that defence are doing around the world. And, I didn't sign up to be a spokesperson for that, but I do believe in what they're doing and will always put the men and women first of the Defence Force.
You talked about having to uphold the values of the Victoria Cross. Do you feel like the public has made you personally a symbol, or do you just wear one on the left side of your chest?
I'm not sure what it is. Goodness, I'm not a hero. Look, I'm just doing my job. None of us think like that. But people, I suppose, people want heroes out there still. People want people to look up to. And again, none of us sort of asked for that. It's just part of what it is. And, that takes a bit to come to terms with. And it's taken a bit of time for me. And I wouldn't say I'm still used to it yet. And you said it 6 years on. I'm still finding my way through that as well.
For anyone listening to your story today, Dan, if they were to learn one lesson, take away one thing, what would you want it to be? For me, I suppose the biggest lesson out of this is back yourself, believe in yourself. We're all, I suppose, capable of achieving remarkable things, and you truly are, and you need to believe in yourself to be able to do it. It goes a long way regardless of, of course you need some background and training and everything else, but if you believe in yourself and have a go, it'll get you most of the way. Daniel Kieran, VC, it's been an honour. Thank you for having me in your home and for speaking with me today. Cheers, thank you very much. That was my conversation with Dan Kieran, VC. You can connect with Dan on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Dan Kieran VC. You can also connect with this podcast. We're on Facebook and Instagram at Life on the Line Podcast and on Twitter at LOTL Pod. Email us at podcast@lifeonthelinepodcast.com and visit our website www.lifeonthelinepodcast.com. On the website, you can also sign up for our e-newsletter. This is the first episode of Season 3. Over the course of this season, we will release a conversation with an Australian military veteran every Tuesday. Some Fridays, we will also have bonus episodes, chats with veterans of another country, historians, authors, those working in the veterans community, you name it. Make sure you're subscribed in your podcast app to get all content, and keep up to date through the newsletter and our social media. You can subscribe to us in Apple Podcasts, Overcast, Stitcher, TuneIn, and more. We have so many great Australian stories to tell, brought to you by myself, Angus Horden, Thomas Kay, Sharon Maskell-Dare, and Rohan Viswalingam of Thistle Productions. If you enjoyed my conversation with Dan Kieran VC, please leave us a 5-star rating and review in Apple Podcasts. It really helps us reach more people to spread these inspiring Australian stories of service and sacrifice. And if you're discovering us more recently, go and check out our previous episodes. We've already released over 100 podcasts. And if you want to hear more stories about the Victoria Cross, check out number 36, Mark Donaldson VC, for my conversation with Mark, and the Season 2 bonus episode, The Commando's Father, with Doug Baird, for my conversation with the father of the late Cameron Baird, VC, MG. My warm thanks go to Dan for coming on the podcast. Life on the Line is brought to you by Thistle Productions. Artwork by Big Cat Design, music by Dan Van Werkhoven. Thanks for listening, and lest we forget,